Welcome to another Kingscrusher radio show. So this is Tuesday, 9:10, and we'll be looking at another two amazing games of Garry Kasparov this week, very shortly. Welcome. Just mute that. Okay, so yes, this is quite a big series on Garry Kasparov games. I'm a great fan. And let's see, this game against Robert Hubner, played in 1985, Hamburg. So yeah, Robert Hubner, 68 years old, Germany. He was born in Cologne 1948. At 16 he tied first in the European Championship, and in 1971 he earned the International Grandmaster title by qualifying for the World Championship candidates. He also qualified in 1980 when he reached the finals before losing to Viktor Korchnoi, and in 1983 where he lost his quarter-final match to Vasily Smyslov on the spin of a roulette wheel, apparently. He still lives in Germany, and as of 2005 was rated in FIDE's top 100 players. So a great player, very, very great player. Let's see what happened in this game. So c4. Let's flip the board actually from Kasparov's perspective. Okay, we see e5, and I'll put on live book and add a kibitzer as well. Gonna need it. Alright, so far so good. Kasparov has responded as though he's playing against the Sicilian. Yeah, in a way. Knight c3. Now d6 actually. Okay, so d6 is like the fourth most popular move in this position. Other popular moves include knight f6, knight c6, bishop b4, but yeah, d6 is interesting, very interesting. So what's the idea? Well, white often plays g3 here actually, trying to just get some pressure on the light squares. Here we see an immediate d4, which is interesting. That's taken. Queen takes d4, and it looks as though black can gain a tempo, but he doesn't here. That's actually quite a popular choice here, just to gain a tempo. We see knight f6, and now g3. So it looks as though white's idea is hopefully to get a comfortable game with this d5 square and the pressure along the diagonal. The tempo gainer is played down, knight c6. Queen goes to d2. So on d2 it's protecting c3, so that might be handy at some point, you'd think. Although it's blocking the bishop, maybe the bishop can potentially fianchetto, and it'll be looking as though white's going to control d5. But Kasparov makes things very, very tricky now. His first move is another tempo gainer on the pawn, bishop e6. Okay, so here, how does white want to defend this pawn? Clearly he doesn't want to move this e pawn, because the bishop was headed for g2, right? He doesn't want to create some more light square weaknesses. But so you might think, well, hang on, isn't b3 possible? Actually knight d5 was played. Let's have a moment to look at b3. This is awkward already. Somehow this is wrong. This setup white's played is somehow wrong. Actually, it might even be queen d2 at fault, because it seems here black is doing better than black should be at this stage, which is only move 7. If we have this position, black's doing far better than it should be, because there's the move d5, just breaking open things, and white seems to be lacking in development. This is not really a good idea. For example, like this, and taking here. It's a disaster, actually. That's a disaster area. So it's strange, but it looks as though knight d5 is one of the better moves. But just for a moment, this has been a path trodden before, actually, this position. And yeah, queen d2 has actually played there's like 101 games in live book. So yeah, it's interesting. But black already, if knight d5 is forced, this is already, I don't know, this seems tricky here for white, because this c4 pawn is just an issue here tactically. We have knight e5 threatening simply knight takes c4 now. It's crazy, but black already seems to be pushing white around. This is just very strange. So something has gone wrong, and we might need an earlier investigation here. b3 now is played to defend that. Now, ordinary development might let white, develop peacefully. An ordinary development move, for example, like bishop e7, maybe white can consider just bishop g2, support that knight, and it should be fine, right? Example, like here, the knight could even head to support the other one on d5, and actually that would represent a great position. But Kasparov is a troublemaker here for white. White wants to establish that nice, cool looking position, maybe, right? And actually, yeah, what would you play here with black? So black to play here. Any ideas? Okay, I mean, so there's been a suggestion for knight takes d5, right? Actually, okay, let's have a look at knight takes d5. Perhaps white is fine though. White's going to be okay. I guess this relates to how ambitious one is and what one's expectations are. But it's hard to imagine with the black pieces, at least for me, that against such a strong GM you should try and crush them straight out of the opening. Because why would that be the case? Well, actually, look how many pawn moves white's played. 1, 2, 3, and how many pieces? This has moved twice, right? And actually the queen's not in a great place either. We have actually knight e4 hitting the queen. Is this just a nuisance threat? We have queen e3, and now knight c5. So the question is, why can't white just carry on now with bishop, say, to g2? He actually plays bishop b2. Yeah, he plays bishop b2. Let's have a look at this position. If bishop g2, there could be trouble ahead. Say c6. Or not. Maybe this is fine, and maybe he should have played it. It's strange, but actually he played bishop g2 might actually be fine. But he didn't. He played bishop b2 as if to try and punish this knight e5. But black responds with kicking this. It goes to f4. So there's this issue here, it seems, about e5, and what about knight e6? Knight takes e6. But yeah, this might be a little. This is looking. There's something peculiar about this position, because the king, if you notice, is still in the center, right? And we see the move knight g4 now, hitting the queen. Queen d4, and it looks as though, well, okay, as long as white's got this bind, relative bind on d5, he's going to play bishop g2 and he'll be happy, right? But here is where there's a magical move which really underlines what we theoretically think might be suspicious, but you need like a mega tactic to underline the issues sometimes. And I must admit, to be able to find these mega tactics, that has to be some psychological expectation that there should be something there. If we were playing with black against some higher rated GM, would we have this kind of expectation? It seems a bit strange to be moving the knights here already. I mean, what is the knight doing on g4? Isn't white threatening like knight takes e6 at the moment just to take here? For example, what is happening here? Why did Kasparov actually want this position? It seems actually awkward. He can't now develop with bishop e7, yeah? He'd just be losing to knight takes e6, yeah? So why would he want this position? But there's something quite ingenious here. There's a like hidden resource in this position. I wonder if you can guess it. Black to play here. I mean, yeah, I think I have to come to say this again. How would we have this expectation? You see, without the expectation, you might think it's quite an investment of time and resources on the clock, right? If this is a practical game, why would you have this expectation? But there's a slight clue that maybe one should. The slight clue, the king's still in the center, and this bishop has been moved, not this one, right? So with the king still in the center, it's a case of the king in the center. And we all know, you know, you should be resourceful sometimes if the king's still left in the center a bit too late. You know, sometimes we've seen games of Mikhail Tal, you know, you can pounce sometimes just before they're about to carry on developing and put their king into safety, right? So no one on stream is seeing this move at all yet. So 200 points if you can see it. Knight. It's not knight. You meant knight a4. It's not knight a4, by the way. It's not d5. Any other ideas? All right, yeah, it's like knight e4. And not only shielding the g4 knight from this tactic, but it also means if the queen leaves here, this is like a drag and drop tactic, we would have check. And then if the king moves, right, then we'd have knight takes f2 check. Pretty nifty, that basic mechanism there, just that alone. So the knight cannot be taken here, it seems. Other moves probably do not work very well. If this, we could just take here. This position looks a little bit precarious for the black knights, but in fact queen b6 here is saving the black knights. We don't have to have a knight stranded. This is no good, I would imagine, because then everything's kind of loose and white's better. But no, the point here would be queen b6, and this is now going to be good for black, whatever happens. Yeah, let's just follow it through. This position, this is actually an interesting side alley of the game, because here if knight takes, I think white is going to be okay with bishop takes. So that's actually a little bit of a poisoned rook there. But d5 first. Yeah, then we're going to play. Well, we're going to wait for this actually, maybe. Then black's significantly better without any controversy. No controversy. Black's just better here. Forget about winning the rook. So yeah, black's taking a bite out of f2 though is major in itself. So yeah, b4. Yeah, inviting that is not too. Or f3. Let's have a quick look at f3. The thing is with b4, that's it. That was a computer suggestion to block the diagonal. Now here, actually, c5 is possible, trying to kick the queen away so we can play this more effectively. This check. Check's also pretty handy as well. Like bishop c3, knight takes. This is crushing as well. In its own right, it's going to be crushing, but actually it seems the most technical move is c5. Takes. Queen moves. Check. Knight takes. If here this doesn't look right, check here. Knight f2 check. Yeah. So not too many choices. I think this is a good response though. Bishop h3 in the circumstance. Now we have this check here. This check here. King f1 and knight g takes f2. Yep. Okay. White now took on e6. The thing is with taking on e6, yes, if we have this f-file, the king's on f1, right? This might not have been the safest course of action. It seems maybe safer is a move like bishop g2. And we're back to this d5. Forget about taking a rook. Back to this d5, and black would be better here. Like we've kind of seen in analogous variations. Black just stands better here. He can be content with this. He's taken a bite out of white's position. He can be content with this. But yeah, bishop takes e6 is a whole different ball game, because structurally now this f-file dynamism needs to be factored in. F takes e6. If a rook lands on f8 later, this is going to be trouble, right? Knight takes e7, but maybe white's banking on the fact, this is going to be difficult because, well, not because of knight c7, but because of, knight g7, right? If we play in this position bishop e7, isn't there things like that? Actually, there might even be better. Queen e3, but black actually is fine here in this case anyway. Even in this case, actually, king d7, because we're going to get to this f-file. The rooks are actually connected. That's fine as well. Kasparov actually just plays it immediately. King d7 without a prompt. Yeah, he's actually hit it. He's going to be playing bishop e7 and rook f8 soon. So we have knight h3. Knight takes h3. Queen takes e4. Now this horrible pin is played. But white is resourceful. Doesn't change the wider picture of issues. This little tactic. It's a nice, cute little tactic, but there's a wider issue here about the king not being safely castled. Yeah. So this is taken, and it's also nicely on a diagonal already. Check. Yeah, this is not great to have with the white pieces. This position. It's equal on pawns, but qualitatively, black's got very well coordinated pieces, and this is just a kind of weak pawn as well. But king safety is shot down here. Bishop e7, yeah, and black's looking forward to this check with either rook, perhaps. Doesn't matter about g7 here. And in fact, here, guess what? Okay, white's controlling f8, but guess what? A shocking move. Not that shocking, no. But can you guess black to play here? Yeah? Anyone? Do you want to move this rook? I mean, you could move this rook. I mean, that might be good as well, but actually just stronger is forget it. Just sack the exchange. Yeah. Sometimes you can just sack the exchange to further your positional trump cards. Okay, rook takes f8 check. So if king g2, that's splat. It's mate in one, yeah? So the king has to go over here. Now we've got a nice little king chase check. Now if king d2, that is asking for like these checks. So like this. I mean, it's pretty bad. Once this happens, then there's no escaping the checks. In fact, the mate in 8 is king b6 here. King b6 is the quickest checkmate here, with the idea of queen a5. This greeting king. We get this. Yeah. Oh. No, not queen b2. Yeah. Well, then we can like take the queen. Anyway, yeah. So we'll go back. Sorry, queen f2. So instead of putting the king on a dark square, we have king d1. But it's the same sort of thing actually. There's a king chase. Check. The king can't go here because we're going to just end up losing the rook at minimum first. So connect the rooks with king c2, but it doesn't help because check. Now if the king goes here or here, I believe that this diagonal is pretty nifty. But in fact, this might even be stronger. Then bringing the rook down. It's fun time with the king, really. There's no king safety here. Yeah, so it's gone. It's forced mate. King d2 was played. This bishop comes in. It's all running with check. Queen e5. White resigned here. Actually, there is this nifty line again with king b6 here to facilitate queen a5. That's actually the most optimal way of checkmating white, it seems. So we get this. Now if here bishop f6 cuts across that diagonal and white is defenseless, basically you can throw in this check and then he'll get mated. So the king like goes back over here, bishop f6, and the threat now is queen a5 checkmate. Queen a5. This stops queen a5, but it loses the queen basically. So let's check. And this is just technically if black wanted to. It's minimal resistance. So yeah, white was completely mashed in this game. I mean, seriously. I mean, I'll take out the moves I put in. So yeah, the game ended here. King b4, there's a check there. This is another way, a5. Well, you get the picture really. It's kind of pretty hopeless. Because now, yeah, you've already got the picture on this. There's things like this coming to make the king. So, but if we just step back and look at this game, I think, oh, what have I just done? I haven't messed things up. I think, yeah, white maybe took one or two liberties, but black was ready with such gigantic punishment. It was unreal. I just managed to lose the stream on Play Chess, by the way. Okay, might have to send it later. So that was an interesting first game I wanted to show. Maybe I'll try restarting this. Okay, sorry about that. For Play Chess. Okay, so that what did you guys think of this game? Have you seen it before? So if that was 1 was fun and 10 was boring, what do you reckon? That was fun? Yeah. Okay, so okay, we'll go on to another game that I want to show you, which is actually one of my favourite Kasparov games of all time. So I might have shown you this a few. Well, it might have been on the channel a few times. But let's go for it again. Just sometimes see some different things revisiting a game, a classic game, a world championship game. So this is topical. In 1985 against Karpov. Okay, so this is a really classic game in the World Championship in 1985. Karpov against Kasparov, Moscow. It's one of my favourite Sicilian defence games in a World Championship match ever. Let's have a look. So Karpov e4. We have c5 for Kasparov. Knight f3. Hold on a sec. Wrong one. There, not that one. Not that one. It was in 1985. Sorry, I meant this one. It was in the World Championship match of 1985 again. Moscow. So e4, c5, knight f3. Yeah, no, Kasparov played here e6. e6. So we have d4, cd, knight takes, knight c6. So this is a Sicilian Taimanov variation, named after Mark Taimanov. And we have knight b5, d6. And now Karpov tried to like create this Maroczy bind on black. And yeah, there was a previous game in the match which featured something highly controversial, which most GMs thought would never be repeated, because I think the assumption was it was just a surprise move, didn't work out very well earlier in the match, never be repeated. So Kasparov plays knight f6, this pawn's protected, this knight's kicked, knight a3, and guess what black plays here? Many of you might have seen the game. So black's play, what would be an interesting move here? So black's trying to use the pawn structure as a kind of straitjacket, which is I kind of mentioned recently on the Kingscrusher channel about how quite often you want to, like, even in the midst of an attack, you want to like somehow as a side effect restrict the opponent's pieces and liberate yours. And this idea of the straitjacket is literally reflected in the choice of wording of certain opening systems, because they have this concept of the binds, and this is a binds position because this Maroczy bind is, in theory, it's controlling b5 pretty strongly. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on b5, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 on d5. So given b5 and d5 might have been breaks ordinarily, they're ruled out. So the binds, and this is like the case with the Roxy bind or the Pillsbury bind, there's something about the pawn structure being used as a kind of restrictive straitjacket. But Kasparov is having none of this here. He repeats this gambit he used in the previous game in the match, which was d5, and people were really shocked because they thought this was just a loss of a pawn without too much compensation. It's a way of quickly breaking out of this bind, this Roxy bind. And I think I've mentioned actually that I find these liberating pawn moves somehow a deeper significance about liberation generally, that there's an emotional connection one can have with them. And even though this is not even my game, I notice in my games I often remember the liberating pawn moves because they activated my pieces. They created freedom. And here, you know, we've got this act of freedom, and it's kind of dramatic. There's an emotional connection that I have with these kind of moves, where this kind of breakthrough, sort of, where the pawn is made. But especially here, is this unsound though? So we have C takes D5, E takes D5, trying to break out of this bind. So white gains this pawn, and we have knight B4, and this must be like, this is deep preparation, right? Knight B4. This looks like a little bit odd to play knight b4. I mean, ordinarily it would be kicked, but here there's a knight on a3. There's no way of kicking this knight. So what is this knight actually doing though? It's not going to win this pawn, is it? Because Karpov's going to, like, he's got a facility just to hold on to the pawn and say, well, you know, what is this knight doing there if it's not getting this pawn back? And in fact, if black was keen to try and get the pawn like that, then this kind of bishop maneuver is pointing at a8, yeah, as a tactical liability. So it seems entirely logical just to say to black, well, look, I'm just going to protect this pawn. I'm not just going to be a pawn up. And how on earth will you add more pressure? Actually, technically though, yeah, I must admit that in this position, black could consider taking, and we're going to look at that now. Why black doesn't really want to take here. This is a chance to take it before bishop f3. Okay, why does black not want to take this pawn here in this position? Two ways. I mean, there's this one or there's this one, right? Let's have a look. Knight takes. This one. It's a little bit uncomfortable here. We don't really want to improve white's rook. So say we played bishop e7. What we could say about this is that it's just a little bit uncomfortable. The centre's wide open here. And if we have a look, say queen c5, bishop e3. Where's the queen going? Yeah? White can even get the queens off, and the position looks as though actually the bishops are having a great time in this position. This rook's a bit of a problem. The queen side's a bit of a problem. There's a bit of paralysis. The Roxy bind has turned into something else here. The centre's wide open, but there's a kind of bind of another sort here on black's queen side development, and white's quite quick to the c file. But these bishops look absolutely beautiful in this position, so white would have a significant advantage here. So maybe that's why it's not part of preparation to actually. That's an example. It's not part of preparation to say like this. It seems to lead white to a favourable position. And if he takes like this, sorry, he played bishop c5 actually. But if he took like this, well, again, I think it's kind of, maybe it's kind of similar, that white is looking quite nice, but it's playable. I mean, this might be playable actually. But it looks a little bit, okay, it looks a little bit awkward though. But it might actually be playable. There's pressure, I mean, there's pressure. The centre's wide open there. No, but the idea was actually to make it a real pawn sack. He makes it a real pawn sack with bishop c5. One thing for sure, one guarantee about this pawn sack here is a little bit seemingly speculative, right? But definitely black's got active pieces, yeah. The bishops are doing quite nicely here. We're pointing at a sensitive spot f2. It might be the engine suggestion is actually bishop e3. If takes. Not taking here, but actually playing check to take this guy. That's interesting. Yeah, white looks to be in good shape here. Black's not getting this major position. That's really interesting to play bishop e3. That's cunning, because it looks as though initially the idea is just to neutralize f2, but no, this would be okay for black. No, that's not the idea. The idea is this queen a4 check. Okay, that's an engine suggestion, bishop e3, but in the game white just castled. Black just castled, and we have this bishop f3, which seems to really consolidate this extra pawn. It does really seem like a solid extra pawn now, free protecting it, free attacking it. But any notion of b5, I think we can just, well, this diagonal does look sensitive, but also maybe knight c2, just hitting one of the attacking pieces. So we end up here, and it does seem like a solid pawn up. Does seem like a solid pawn up. But, sorry, after bishop f3, the idea seems to be revealed. It is a positional pawn sack, bishop f5. And it's a staggering idea. In a way, that there's perhaps not just the idea of liberating pieces can also perhaps be applied to how one kind of can have more centralized pieces for the opponent than the opponent, because more centralized pieces offer you greater opportunity. So is having more centralized pieces a form of liberation as well? You could argue perhaps that is, yeah, especially if this knight's on d3, it's hitting out in all directions. It's pretty liberated as a knight just because it's massively centralized. But you know, white's focus here is on solidifying this extra pawn, and he's not guarding this d3 square. So okay, we have bishop g5 for the moment, and perhaps with this pin white is threatening here to challenge. If he had another move, bishop e4 is interesting. If he had another move, example, just quickly show, because that would take away the d3 square, right? It would challenge this diagonal. If he had one more move, he'd do that. So perhaps it seems as though that might be interesting. But black's move controls e4 a bit more, so he's still interested in perching a knight on d3, which, as I say, in one respect can have this idea of liberation in a way. The more centralized your pieces, the more kind of liberated you could call them. It's not just about your pieces being locked in by pawn structure. So, because yeah, it will be striking out in all directions. This is an octopus knight opportunity, and it was named after Raymond King described it as an octopus knight. I remember in Bats for Chess Openings. It was right in the preface introduction of Bats for Chess Openings, which caught my attention with the game actually. So we see queen d2, and the knight's not even keen here immediately to occupy d3 in this position, because this knight at the moment can come in with knight c4. That's kind of a move that might be desirable. You might think, well, hold on a sec, why does this knight improve? Whilst this knight's offside, that's pretty stuck. And actually, you know, knight c4 might actually be a good move here, because black hasn't taken the precaution of b5 yet. So knight c4 might actually be an interesting move, so that white's knights are not looking totally decentralized while this centralized knight appears. This position might be okay for white. Here, can even give back this pawn. And even this starts to be interesting. You know, this starts to be interesting territory to explore. Because look at this. That knight on a3 was a problem piece. Here, it seems as though white should be fine. And this pin persists to be annoying, actually. So we could even get a small advantage for white. Yeah. But for some reason, this knight was left on the rim. A rim, not on the rim is dim, as they say. For some reason, we have this move queen d2. Maybe it kind of reflects an inaccuracy. This knight's a kind of in the prison of being on the rim. If you know, imprisoned, it's not liberated. It should come to the center. I don't know if there's any, if this is. I don't know how many of you have seen this game before and had these thoughts about this game. But what do you think? I mean, I'm telling you, that's the engine's top recommendation, is basically centralize this knight ASAP. In variations of the Sveshnikov, a quick b5 stops that kind of thing. But sometimes the knight comes like that in lines of the Sveshnikov. Here, black's got c2 under control, so this centralization is not feasible, right? When you've got a knight on a3. So I don't know. So that's interesting. It looks like maybe it's some sort of psychological effect of this pawn sack, but queen d2 maybe is the statement is made, well, you know, I'm a pawn up, I can make this even more solid, this extra pawn. And this is now ruled out. b5 not only rules out the knight's ruled out of c4, it's ruled out of c2 as well. So this is a bit of a out on the limb knight. And meanwhile, this knight now, after rook a1, is interrupting black's d file and is striking out. The octopus knight is installed in the position, and with it comes an immediate threat of b4, winning a piece. Is it worth a pawn? I mean, with this knight pinned, this pawn's not going anywhere. This one stumbles back to b1. And we see h6, h4, b4, and this one's going on the rim now with knight a4. It's like white's knights have been drinking too much here. What is going on here? Drunken Knights. There's actually a Drunken Knights chess club, by the way, in the UK. So Drunken Knights here. What if knight e2? There's a tactical reason this blocks the bishop's retreat. In fact, g5 and g4, bang, bishop's kind of trapped. That's not entirely good for white. Yeah, to lose a piece like that. Although there might be some weaknesses around here we can have a brief look at. But black essentially is better. If he takes here, that's bad. There's knight g3. Things get horrible. So yeah, black's going to be better fundamentally after winning that piece. So yeah, knight e2 is dissuaded. Although technically it's probably the best move to investigate. This mass decentralization of the knights with knight a4 is serious consideration needs to be made to avoid this scenario of knight a4. This could actually be better than the position with knight a4. I mean, just look at this position with knight a4. While we're here, let's follow this through seriously. Knight c1 takes. You see, the thing is, this isn't entirely clear cut because of these weaknesses. This position here from an is only a small advantage to black. Something is quite damaging about black's king safety as well. So I don't know. There's some problems to solve here. So we get this position. It's looking a little bit precarious. That's what I'm thinking. Knight g5, and black's got a small edge. It's not as big as you might have thought. If knight takes d2, maybe even white's on the way to getting... Well, no, that's fine for white. It's fine for white. Yeah, sorry, knight c1 is saving the piece anyway. What am I talking about? What am I talking about? It's saving the piece. Why am I saying that's winning a piece? Pardon me. Black's best might be knight takes b2. And then takes... This is better for black. This is better. But even so, okay, white is not losing a piece to g4. It looks as though... No, knight c1. Because we're hitting this one. That's the point. There's no time to win a piece. If here, this is okay for white, this position. This is actually even slightly better for white. So we can say, I mean, from hindsight of all this analysis here, that knight a4 is another mistake. All right, compared to knight e2, it seems. So we've got two knights decentralized, and black's pieces are centralizing at the same time. Okay, so bishop g3, rook c8. The knight's actually helping control c1. We've got a good clamp on c1. Now this knight wants to get back, so b3 to give it like the b2 square. It's miserable, but if that exchanges off this knight for this knight, it's a good deal, right? Now g5 is played. So the question is, h3 is played here. If knight b2 here, in fact this is no good now, because in fact black would be winning this piece with knight takes b2, g4, and if bishop e2, we've got rook c2. So that piece would be dropping off in this line. So white has to stop this g4 now. Pretty serious. So yeah, he's actually took on d6 and played g3. But contrast the knights now. This knight wants to join to be more kind of liberated as a central piece. Knight d7. Where it's going to help its fellow knight and also put pressure on f3. Bishop steps back. Again, we can investigate here why knight b2 is not possible. It's a move, knight b2. It is actually a move. It doesn't lose immediately or anything. Although queen f6 maybe it is a significant advantage to black here, because we're on f3, so white would be losing the exchange here actually. Yeah, knight b2, queen f6. If knight c4 here, this position, if here, this is looking very nice for black anyway. Alright, so the bishop goes back to g2, and we have queen f6, which rules out knight b2 now. So white is the one that's kind of paralyzed in a way. It seems the bind is actually on white here, and the bind is not just about pieces and pawn structure, it's about decentralization versus centralization. Yeah, these pieces are more liberated than these ones in effect. So the bind is actually on white. It was meant to be a Maroczy bind against black, but look at black's pieces. The complete reverse has happened in effect. The complete reverse. White is in a bind of some sort of positional bind. In fact, you can't move either rook, can't move either knight. What can he move? What, these pawns? It will start weakening his king. Can he move the bishop? It'll be like, where can he move the bishop? Not many places. So he plays Karpov is reduced to a move like a3, That's just reinforced. Then A takes, A takes. This is very miserable now for white. this move, Queen A2. Yeah, it's very rare to see like Karpov in this sort of weird position. Very, very weird. Bishop G6. And with Bishop G6, there might be an idea of just playing through with this sort of plan. If white wasn't doing anything, he immediately reacted with D6. But say white's wanted to test black. What was black up to in this position? What's the mystery about this position? Why does white want to give up this pawn as in the game? Let's have a quick investigation here. Alright, say the queen went back. Let's give black a few more moves. What would he do with them? Let's go back for a moment. Is H4 any good? Maybe do this. Play this. Then what? This. And then he's going to F3. If black had his way, this would just be a forced mate like this with the fawn pawn installed. I think that's the background story here. Black would essentially, if white didn't do anything, would essentially install this fawn pawn and play knight F3, mating on G2. If white's not going to do a thing, he'll just get mated on G2. No, so he's got to do something. So he plays this move D6. And okay, whoa, what is D6 actually doing if black did pursue this plan of H5 out of interest? I mean, this is that really the case? D6 was for bishop B7. It still looks pretty miserable actually. I mean, maybe even this is still good for black. This kind of plan. It is actually still good for black. This kind of plan. But anyway. The G4 was played. G4. It doesn't rule out playing like this. Doesn't rule that out, by the way. So Queen D2, hitting H6. I mean, H5 is probably plausible here, but King just protects H6. And in fact, Bishop B7 is was mentioned briefly by the engine, but here. White is fed up with this position. Okay, what happens if white doesn't do anything here? I think we're back to installing the fawn pawn, actually, and then this knight's going to like spring into F3. Yeah, if white doesn't do anything, he plays actually F3 now. Again, these pawn moves are trying to break out of the position. But yeah, if he doesn't do anything, I think we're back to this fawn pawn plan. Actually, this is one of my easy favourites for winning in blitz. We're just back to this plan. Because if a white takes there, that's just horrible as well. Because then there'll be things like this, and we've got H2 as a target backward pawn. And okay, so you know we're back to this plan here, and we're gonna play. Like, I mean, this is gonna be all over basically. I mean, this looks terrible. Maybe there's stronger. Why doesn't this work? D2. Maybe there's a bit of resistance there, but anyway, okay, just making sure white can't do anything. White plays F3, and you don't really want to play F3 because it like kind of weakens this whole diagonal. But he's reduced to terrible moves. So Queen takes D6, and we don't really want to capture away from the center because again, in principle, these moves capturing away from the center, they lose central control. But he does that, so we've got this whole diagonal to play with. That's pounced on with Queen D4 check, King H1. And now the knight centralizes like this, knight F6. It's coming into this horrible E4 square. Yeah. Because this would be immune because of knight F2, you know, winning the queen. So knight E4 is a great square to get the knight to without queen takes D3 because of knight F2. So we see rook F4. This is pretty desperate stuff, but it's using the pin. Can't take it as the pin. But knight E4 anyway. And in fact, Karpov decides here that the position's pretty miserable here. If he moves his queen, let's say he moves his queen, this is actually a forced mate, as you might expect actually, because this diagonal is actually yeah, a disaster. I mean, yeah, we're just gonna like that's a disaster, and this is just like a classic, you know, forcing mate scenario. Well, that's gonna be mating. So we have queen takes d3, knight f2 check. So it looks as though that's interesting. But the rook's attacking the queen, so you might ask, well, what about king g1? King g1, there's knight h3 double check. If here, then that's check, right? But also we've got a mate in one, which is better than taking the queen. And if here, we can just take the queen here, and this is crushing. This is crushing white. If here we've got this check, takes here, everything's hanging. It's a total disaster. This is pins. This is going. This is going. This is not doing anything. So yeah, that's no good to play king g1 after this check. So by a process of elimination, king g1's not too good. So rook takes f2 is played. Then we have bishop takes d3, and yeah, black's won the queen. But is that the end of the story? Well, fascinatingly now, with the king on h1 and the bishop there, there's another great move played in this position. It's another bit of entertainment value of this game, actually, this next move by black. So black's play, can you see what black plays in this position? Any ideas? Well, actually, there's multiple ways of it's crushing. Actually, let's face it, the position's crushing. But normally, if we pieces, 2 rooks worth queen, and we've got 3 pieces over here, which you might think balances black's. They don't, of course, because white's king's not particularly safe here. So this move is crushing. Queen e3, rook takes, and the point is rook c1. Yeah, overloading, threatening queen takes d3. So if rook takes here, it all collapses after check, and we're left with this position where more materials dropping. For example, here there's rook takes b3. Yeah. So basically, it's not possible to take the queen. So we have knight b2. But now coming to the back row with queen f2 for rook e1, very powerful. And now white's pieces, literally, they're like stumbling around these knights. After rook takes d1, knight takes d1, rook e1 check. Karpov resigns here. It's a mate in 2, of course. If he plays on, it will be just a mate in 2. So the whole game, actually, I think now looking at it, we can. I think I'm going to say it's the whole game is about liberation and the different types of liberation. Yeah, there's different types of liberation. I don't know if you've seen the film Love Actually. There's different types of love in Love Actually, but this is like liberation actually. There's different types of liberation. The actual act of centralizing your pieces is a sort of form of liberation. It's not just about whether the pieces are trapped within pawn structure. So the whole gambit here, if we see what it did, it centralized black's pieces in a massive way in comparison to white's pieces, and the end result, you know, white was reduced to weakening his own king position. And it was easy for black to like find the tactics after that. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and it's nice for me to revisit this classic as well. I hope you got something out of it which you might not have seen before. Actually, if you saw something new in it, and 10 nothing new. Have most of you seen this game? I hope you enjoyed it, and Yeah, I think I've seen something new in it, so I'm glad. I mean, I wasn't sure about presenting this game because I've kind of gone over it before, but maybe it's like a film. Sometimes like films, you watch them again, you see some new nuances. And in the UK, they're showing, for example, the Bourne Ultimatum series or whatever. So you get to see those films like hundreds of times. There's new nuances. But here, yeah, I've seen this game a few times. But what does it represent now? Yeah, I think it's different forms of liberation. So, okay, comments, questions, likes, appreciated. Thanks very much. And see you next week.